Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review Blade series. So, going into this, I know originally I had reviewed Blade the series, and I just kind of reviewed it and just compiled any kind of like real, true, legitimate just thoughts about this series. And really, like, I didn't put as much effort into this review as I probably should have had. And so, really, for anyone who had watched the previous review and now is watching this, yeah, like, I didn't put a lot of effort in that one. So, this time around, I wanted to try and actually just go through episode to episode because it's much easier that way, and plus I'm trying to like compile a bunch of stuff together all smack dab at one point in time. So like this one is probably just gonna be in like an extra video that goes on to the day, but I actually wanted to have this be put on the right footing and actually just do episode to episode. So going into Blade the series, if people have never heard of this before and you are now going on to this review going like, what is this about? Blade? The series? What? So, really we are to have, of course, the Wesley Snipes Blade, not exactly being this Blade, but it does go into a similar I say similar because really there is nothing that was adapted from the other vampire movies beside or to now this. We really have like some things referenced that feel like Blade. We also have some reusing footage from the Blade movie to be put into this first pilot episode, showing that, or showcasing Blade's birth from the movie used here. But really, we have this being that honestly, Blade is just going through this episode beating people up for information. And that's a bulk of what he does in this episode. And we have really most of this story being carried by some character that they just invented for this show, I guess. We have a character who is named Krista Starr, and it seems that she is an ex-military person who is to come home because her brother had died. And so we have Krista coming home to immediately, once finding that she is done with the military, coincidentally, she's also done with having, sadly, a brother. Because we are to find out that eventually this brother had basically gone into being mixed in with the wrong people. And so Krista is to find out what had happened to her brother, and she is also going and trying to find out why it seems that at every point in turn we have this seemingly Blade character that keeps appearing and she is chasing after him. Really, that's like a bulk of this episode. Plus also we have Krista, who is trying to figure out things about vampires. Because I guess, like, this person, Krista, is possibly the audience. Like, if they've never heard of Blade in their life, I guess Krista is helping us figure out this world, figure out vampires, and figure out that not everything works like crosses or holy water. Really, I was just kind of like, man, like, you know what? Like, they set this up, right? Like, they had Blade movies that were really good, right? Like, I didn't think the Blade movies were that bad to where we had to reset up this world, reset up this universe. How Kristen can easily be able to see a familiar tattoo, which that basically means when a human is marked with a tattoo of a certain like hieroglyph like symbol, they are basically to be called familiars. So that way, these familiars are in hopes to try and win over the vampires, so much so that eventually they get turned into a actual vampire. But until then, they're just going to be a familiar that is just going to alliance themselves with the vampires. So going into this show, really it's just us mostly getting bits and pieces with Blade, but we also get to see Chuck no wait, I want to say the Iceman Chuck Liddell, because I do watch UFC and I want to confirm that. Um, that I do see. Yeah, Chuck Liddell. I'm like, and he plays a tattoo artist in this episode. So for those of you who are UFC fans, like originally this show was done on Spike, and right off the bat they were trying to get a famous UFC fighter to be on the Blade show because Blade was to immediately follow some UFC fight, and the guy who was playing Blade was at this UFC fight to promote this. So like they're really trying to have like this Blade series follow a UFC thing. That's why Chuck Liddell was on this very first episode. So with that said, yeah, like that's all I wanted to get into of the cryptic like version of this spoiler. We have it to really this episode is to really just cover the kind of beginnings of where Blade is now and where Blade's story is mostly going to lead into, which is basically just Krista being a bulk of it, a bulk of his story. It's like Kirsta and Blade. Yeah, like Kirsta, she's doing a lot of stuff, but then that Blade just kind of shows up and just kills some people and off some folks. So, with that said, I think it's about that time to go into that coveted doubled five timed territory to go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this episode. So, in the very beginning of this episode, we are to show some action right away to get people immediately intrigued. So, we have Blade who is in Moscow because we always have to have Blade randomly in some bizarrish part of some country somewhere because any of the Blade movies will tell you that. So we have Blade who is chasing after this Moscow military. I want to say general, but I don't know the actual rung of where this guy is at. So I'll just say military guy. So Blade is chasing after some military guy, and when eventually Blade is to catch said military guy, we are to find out that this guy, this general, let's just say, for whatever reason, is actually a vampire. And so when Blade catches this guy, Blade is like, well, you know what's going to happen, right? And so we have Blade fighting off this general, and Blade eventually just wipes the floor with him. It seems that at some point there is, at first, like this general is winning, but then Blade is just so dominant, because that's what he always is. He's very dominant within any number of these people. So we have eventually this general that is on his knees, and so we have Blade wanting some information because that's seemingly what he's going to be doing throughout this whole entire show is asking for information. So we have Blade asking this general like who is who is basically like the head of everything, like who is the guy. And so we have this general who is to point to Marcus Van Sciver. And so we have Blade going like, oh, okay, that's the name that I wanted. I'll let you go. And so we have the general who's well, you're joking, yes? Like, why would anybody like ask if this person is joking? Like, I would have been like, okay, we'll see you later. If you're gonna kill me when my back is turned, that's fine too. But like, and so we have Blade, who's like, yeah, I'm joking, and then he immediately cuts off his head, kills the guy. There's so much blood that bizarrely sprays out. Like, I don't know if they wanted to either have the vampires die naturally or like die the normal Blade way, which means that they just turn into this like bizarrish orange or yellowish like dusty thing, whatever the heck that is. It looked so weird when I was seeing it in this movie. I'm like, huh? I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Like, somebody just turned into some yellow and orange, dusty, weird, bizarrish thing. Like, if anything, like, I don't know. Like, I think they bizarrely were, like, if you guys remember Buffy, like, I think they, like, all of a sudden just turned into, like, gray things, and then you saw, like, their skeleton, and then the skeleton turned into a dust. Like, that's such a weird thing, but I just wanted to remember that for a second there, if people remember the Buffy the Vampire Slayer show. So, pushing on, so uh, we are to have a detective Brian Boone. So we have Detective Brian Boone, who is to go and get this lady of the night, and he is to bring her to this shed farm like place. And we have this lady of the night who's asking Detective Brian Boone, hey, like, what's that sound? And Boone says, like, well, like, it doesn't matter. Like, if anything, like, don't worry about anything, because this girl is consistently asking, like, where are we? Like, what is that? What, who, She's pulling, like, the Mark Wahlberg from The Happening, where it's like, who's it? Wait, give me a minute. Wait a minute. Just give me a second. So, we all of a sudden have a vampire that is to come upside down from the rafters to go and nibble on this woman and to grab onto her and to be hoisted up to the ceiling, to where a bunch of vampires are all held up onto the ceiling and are consuming this woman. So we have the detective that is looking through this girl's wallet to only find that she has $50 to her name, and Detective Boone is like, $50? What a cheap hoe! So he ends up walking off. He ends up like strutting off, just going like, yeah, I killed a person, but I don't care. Isn't this great? So we are to go on. So we are to have Marcus Van Sciver, who is to go off with Zach Starr and go to this location where his eyes are blindfolded. So Marcus is to tell Zach Starr, you know what? The sad thing about you is that you had kind of been poking in your nose, or poking your nose where it doesn't belong. And so, for you to do that now, you need to be poked somewhere else. Or you need to be poked yourself. And so, we have Zach, who ends up getting shot and killed. And so, we have Krista Starr, who is coming home, coincidentally, after, I guess, her tour of the military. What a bad timing for her to come back. So, we have, like, I think she's coming home for some family thing, but it is what it is. I don't remember what the family thing actually is, because I don't remember, because I'm being honest. But so, Kirsta is to come back, and immediately she's having, like, squabbles with her family. It seems that immediately she's having an argument with her father, and so But eventually there's a knock on the door to let Krista know that, hey, yeah, your brother's dead, just so you know. Like, see you later. Like, we have the detective who's telling her this bad news and saying, like, yeah, like, we're eventually going to find the man that did this to your brother. And, uh, and so we have this detective waddling off. And so we have Krista who is calling and trying to get a hold of this detective, and this detective clearly does not give a but really he's just not giving a because he knows that this case is actually tied to a vampire thing, and so he's basically trying to cold case it as much as humanly possible, just make this whole investigation just an unsolved thing that he can just wipe away. So we have a funeral for Krista's brother, and so Krista is to eventually see his tombstone and all kinds of things. So we eventually have Krista, who is to eventually go to her brother's apartment, kind of look things around, and so we are to have Blade, who is to go on and kind of walk through this apartment also, and so Krista is to see Blade, and so Blade is to uh, skedaddle out of here and kind of jump and slide down this building that seems impossible for a normal person to get down off of. Like, basically, I think he doesn't like scale down. I think he just jumps all the way down. And Krista's like, how did he do that? So we have Krista, who is trying to follow Blade, and eventually, like, Krista is just seeing Blade on this rooftop, and she's like, God, there's no way I'm going to get to this guy. And so we have Krista, who was to have a kitchen knife on her to try to see if she can, like, stab this guy or defend herself. And she accidentally, while running, stabs herself in the arm, and immediately doesn't think, like, you know what, I should probably, this might be a pretty deep cut. Maybe I should probably just, like, also think that I'm dumb for all of a sudden I'm just walking around and I just stab myself with a knife while I'm running. But we have Krista, who's bloodied arm, and so we have Blade, who evidently smells the blood from Krista, so he's desperately in need of wanting to get his serum. And so there is also a moment here where, like, I don't feel like it's really important, but it is, like, I guess it could be important to some people. We have both Blade and Shen who are picking out their new hideout. And so, really, we have Blade, who is severely picky about what his hideout is, and Shen is like, dude, just find your sleeping bag and toss it somewhere so that way we can start going and start getting things done. Like, if anything, like, you're being too nitpicky about where we hide out, Blade. Just freaking pick something, get it over with. So Blade just picks this spot, and so Blade is to come back to this spot to go and get his serum. And so Blade is mentioning to Shen, you know what, like, you should probably, like, double time, try to figure out how to, uh, be able to give me, the inhaler of this version of serum instead of actually having me forcibly having to do these needles every single time. And we have Shen who's mentioning, like, well, you know what? Like, if anything, like, the serum part, the needle part, that's easy. The inhaler part, not so much. Like, it's not so easy to replace the inhaler part of your serum. And plus, if anything, all the knowledge that was given on to the serum slash inhaler thing, yeah, not so easy to find anywhere. And so, like, it's not like a Whistler just gave all this information out and just, like, hey, everybody, you know about the blade serum stuff? Here you go. Like, he didn't give it to everybody. Like, probably, like, Shen is having to refigure all this crap out. So, we go on. So, we are to uh, eventually have uh, Krista, if she is not just, like, trying to do all kinds of things in this show. So, Krista is to go and talk to Detective Boone and kind of say like, well, hey, like where is the case of my brother's killer? Like, where is it going? And so Detective Boone is like, you know what? Like, your brother is kind of like the wrong place, wrong time kind of guy. Like, this is a guy that kind of like we aren't really going to care about. Like, this guy is just a guy that is just gonna like take up file space, and we don't really give a about him, really. Like, so, like, if I were to like dedicate my life to find your brother's killer, I'm sorry, but I just don't give a crap. Like, I really just don't care. So we have Detective Boone, who has the file right then and there of her brothers, and so we have Krista, who's like, well, like, you know what? Like, if you're busy, or if you can't exactly figure out this whole case thing, then maybe like I'll take a crack at it because I'm actually from the military, and I think that maybe I can be able to like figure out this case. I'm like, I'm sorry, like, if you were a cop that was, like, drummed off the force, then yeah, maybe you can private eye this whole thing. But, like, military and cop, like, it doesn't mix. Like, it's not like it's, like, universal that all of a sudden, like, a military person can just all of a sudden be like, well, I guess I could just I guess I could just be a private investigator because I was in the military. Like, I don't think it's one and the same with that whole thing. I could be wrong because probably when thinking about it, there's stuff like military police, but you know, kind of feels like a little wiggle room. Doesn't exactly feel like it's like military and the cops are the same thing. And so we also have Detective Boone, who's like, hey man, like if anything, this isn't the military, and so yeah, no, you're not gonna get the file. So we have Krista, who is to go and hit the fire alarm on her way out, and to uh, like sit in this employees only, I guess, janitor locker until everyone goes out. Krista is to steal the file and to go and read it on her own, and so we, I guess, eventually have Krista, who is to go and eventually find her brother's aliases and or friends, and so we are to eventually have uh, Krista, who is to go and excuse me, who is to go and find this kid in this arcade. Man, was Krista just so easily to be able to find this guy in this arcade. And so we have Krista, who sees that this guy has a tattoo easily. And so we have Krista, who's to mention, like, what does this tattoo mean? Because we also have, I guess, her brother's keychain that had the exact same symbol on his keychain. I'm like, what are they just like flaunting this around? Like, hey guys, like, look at my like familiar merchandise. Like, I'm gonna have a familiar shirt with a vampire logo on it, just in case like Blade wants to see me and ask me some questions. I'm like, hey, familiar. Like, dude, you know how much they hid that in all the movies? Like, dude, they're like flaunting it in this show. I'm gonna go and get my familiar pajamas and flaunt them out while I'm sleeping at night. Hopefully Blade doesn't break into my window and ask me any questions. So we go on and we have Kristen who sees this familiar symbol, and so we have uh, Krista who's to kind of chase after this guy, knock him down, and throw a gun onto him. And so we have this guy, this person. I don't know exactly what his name was because heaven forbid I look that up. We have him going like, dude, you're crazy, but Chris is not going to shoot this guy, and he realizes it, so he runs off. So Chris is not given any information, so Krista is to start looking up this symbol, and this symbol is to lead her to a guy that is to be familiar with vampirism and, like, I guess probably wrote a book or whatever about any of this stuff. So we are to have Kristen go to a man called Melvin Kalo, which a lot of people will probably know him from the National Lampoon's Vacation movies, like Christmas Vacation and The Trip to Wally World and all that kind of stuff. Like he was in those movies. So we have Krista going to Melvin, and so Krista is to ask like what this symbol means, and Melvin is to be like, hey, if you don't know about the Blade movies, then check all this stuff out. So Melvin is to say that this is of course a tattoo of the familiars, and so like that's what that symbol means. And so also we have Krista who is to find out that this guy had a thing of a drug on him, and so Krista also wanted to know what this drug was. And so Melvin is to tell, oh yeah, that's like vampire ash. That's like to get a normal human being to feel like a vampire. So like if anything, there's a lot of people that end up like biting off their own fingers because of that. Like it really got them amped up. So we also have like Kirsu's like curious like, how do you know all this? And so Melvin is like, well, because I have my own private stash of vampirish things. Like he has the drugs, he has skeletons with fangs coming on it, and all kinds of creepy looking things that Krista is like, yeah, you know what? I think I'm just gonna go out ahead and leave. Yeah, I'm gonna see you later. Goodbye. And so, but we have Krista who is to continue her curiosity with Melvin to come back and ask him about Blade. And so we have Melvin who's like, yeah, I've had several encounters with Blade, and like, so we have Melvin who is telling Krista like Blade's whole entire backstory, which is that's where we get the usage of the original movie of his mother giving birth to Blade, who was a vampire / human. So we are to push on. So I'm trying to. Okay. So Blade is to eventually push on to go to this tattoo parlor, and he is to get information about a vampire symbol that has been going out there, and where like he could find it. And so we are to have Grift, who is Chuck Liddell, tell him like, dude, like I'm more than willing to give you any kind of information. And so like, but Blade is still like beating the crap out of him. And so we have Grift or Gift, Grift, yeah, I think it's Grift. we have Grift, who is mentioning like, dude, why are you still beating me up? I was gonna give you information, and Blade was like, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Just beating the crap out of him more. So we push on, and so Blade doesn't really have much of information to tie on. So, but it seems that eventually Krista and Blade are eventually going to connect paths once again. So we eventually push on to have uh, Krista go on, and it seems like she is getting fairly close to uh, finding out about vampires, and so Krista eventually gets far too close to eventually have two vampires come after her, because Krista is the only one trying to seek out information about vampires right now. And so we have two vampires going and trying to attack Krista. Krista is to shoot them with regular bullets, but eventually she ends up getting silver bullets later on. And so we have these vampires who end up getting shot, and they just kind of laugh the bullets off. So we end up having Blade, who is to go and take down these vampires, and then eventually have a talking to Krista that she needs to stop what she's doing or she's going to get killed. And so it seems that Krista kind of knows a little bit about vampires, but not really all that much, to where Krista is to eventually go with Blade to talk about even more stuff about vampires and how, like, do crosses in holy water still work? And they're like, no. Like, you're a moron. Like, go away. Like, I hate you. I hate you. So we push on, and so we have Blade, who is out a informer. So Krista is going to fill that role. So we have Blade, who is deciding to work with Krista because she seemingly has training and seemingly can be like a good informant. And so we have Blade decide that Krista is going to try to work her way into the House of Chthon and work for Marcus Van Sciver. And so, because what had happened was Blade and Shen, their last informant was actually Krista's brother. And eventually, if she didn't find that out, she will. But so Krista is kind of following in her brother's footsteps. So just kind of the very tail end of this movie is we have, or the tail end of this episode, we have Krista, who is making it into this party where Marcus Van Sciver and a bunch of all these vampires are, and like they're toasting champagne and all kinds of things, and Krista is walking into this this party, this whatever, and that's where the episode ends. So with that said, I think and I hope I covered everything within this episode, but there might have been a thing here or there that I probably mixed around about or whichever. There was a roundabout way that I had to review this, and it probably isn't in the perfect order of things, but a lot of this is just like us getting to know like the whole like Blade thing. Even though like the thing that sucks about this show and the movies is they aren't the same. It doesn't feel like the same thing. I don't really care if this is like an adaptation from some other Blade comic book. Because really it just kind of feels like this isn't a absolute Blade story. It's just like, okay, well, Blade is taking a back seat to someone else who's going to be the more dominant story. And I just don't like that at all. And really, I could say that, like, there's overall potential in this show to have been a good thing, and maybe this could have eventually been rolled into the whole MCU thing at some point in time when to kind of show that there is some kind of connection with this person in the MCU world eventually, like how they're probably going to do with the Netflix Marvel characters. But yeah, I don't think that that's ever going to happen now, considering they're having this brand new blade that they're being infused in here, and so on and so forth. So with that said, I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.